sometimes when you want wisdom on a particular subject, it's best to just go to the source itself. And last week, I took time away from work to go spend a little time with Mike Michalowicz. We had a small group of people that we took to New Jersey to spend some time with him, and he gave us a lot of wisdom that was specific to our businesses, but also I thought it was general enough that I could share with you guys. So happy Profit First allocation day. I have made those allocations, and now a little wisdom from the Profit First master. When we got to meet with him, one question that I did get over the weekend was, how in the world did you get access to Mike Michalowicz this way? And I would just say that people that you view as mentors or are authors or are bigger than life to you are many times very accessible on a personal basis. And one of the ways that you can create relationship is to express your gratitude. These people produce content from their hearts or generate things from their experiences, and they don't always hear back, or sometimes when they do, it's not the greatest feedback that they get online or even at seminars and that kind of thing. And I found the best ways to connect with people who seem possibly inaccessible is to express gratitude and be encouraging. So breathing a little bit more life into their calling is always a helpful way to open up a door for possible relationship, connection, and accessibility at some point. Now, this was a small group. 5 or 6 of us got in a room together with Mike, and we were able to make that personal connection because of relationship building over 2 to 3 years now. So it's not something that happens overnight, especially if you're starting out being grateful or giving constructive feedback positively, in a nice and encouraging way. Those are the ways that you can build a relationship, but it doesn't happen overnight. Because what typically happens with that kind of thing is you express gratitude or share things like, hey, I was able to reach this specific goal. This gave me life, and I just wanted to say thank you because I couldn't have gotten to X without you or without what you're doing. And that creates an opening for a relationship, but then you have to wait for the opportunities to come along. They're typically along the way. You also have things where if they ask for you to do something, especially if it's no cost to you other than a click or writing a small paragraph of referral or recommendation or making a connection on their behalf, giving something before you ask. And these are just typical marketing tips anyway. This will help you grow your business and build relationships with every kind of person, but also some of these bigger than life people this works with. But when they ask for something and it doesn't cost you much, or maybe it doesn't cost you anything, and you step in and fulfill that wish for them, like a recommendation or a connection, that is another step in building a relationship and a connection and opportunity with them. And then you might get invited into opportunities because it turns out maybe you're one of their most interactive people, most engaged people, and you've built up this equity of gratitude, encouragement, feedback, and recommendations and connections and other opportunities for them. And then you get invited into different kinds of experiences with them, which is exactly what happened. Now, again, that has taken years to sort of build that rapport with Mike. And I think more people that are influencers like that are more accessible if you take time to actually build a relationship and you're consistent over time in their groups. And then you can be invited into opportunities that allow you to make some more personal connection and build even further relationship, but also get some huge value just from their brains. And a lot of times it's not zero cost, but you have the opportunity to be in a smaller setting. So a lot of people can go see Mike in a big group, and some people are invited for opportunities for smaller activities. And this was just one of those times where the invitation was available. And so I was able to get in front of him and ask some really great questions, and some of other marketing business leaders were with me, and they were also able to ask questions. So we got a lot of really good feedback on our businesses and just overall building a business profitably without working so hard. And one of the key things that Mike mentioned, so I'll probably share 3 or 4 insights that he gave while we were in our conversations together. And one of the key things was building a scalable business, that there is a difference between a growing business and a scalable business. With a growing business, in order for it to grow, you have to have more inputs and more outputs. And that just means, especially if it's you alone or you have a small team, that there is the possibility of capacity that you reach. And the only way you can get past that capacity for a growth business is to add more people and add more doing to that process. With a scalable company, which is less inputs and more growth, and that just means that you don't have to work as hard for bigger revenue output and bigger profitability output. And this is all about systemization. And, Clockwork has a lot of good content around building systemization in your business, but systemizing what you do, which requires niching, and niching into a specific audience, which doesn't necessarily mean an industry, though it can, but there are other ways to niche as well. But one of the constant pieces of feedback that we were offering up to Mike was around it getting boring if you niche, or if you niche too far, or picking something and then it gets scary for turning everything else away. So boring and scary were the 2 pieces of feedback that we were offering up for niching further than maybe we had already niched in order to be scalable. And Mike said, if you find it boring, that's the time to go deeper. And so thinking along those lines, we build websites, right? So if that gets boring, especially if it's for a particular industry, there's a way to be more of a specialist, which will bring more revenue anyway, versus being a general practitioner. And Mike gave the example of a doctor's office. When you're looking for a general practitioner, it needs to be close, it needs to be cheap, it needs to be within your healthcare. And then you'll go see them. Then you might choose that provider in your area. When it comes to something more specialized, like if you have to have heart surgery, you're going to be a little bit more discerning. You'll be willing to pay more. You may or may not care if they're in network or out of network, because you might be willing to foot the extra bill because you just want the best, because you have a very specific need that could be dangerous and you need it fixed. So becoming more of a specialist gets a higher revenue per client. And so when we talk about things get boring, he says go deeper. So in the example of building websites, maybe it's you get deeper into specifics around better conversions. So maybe there are best practices, but for that particular client, you're changing colors, you're doing motion pieces, you're changing headlines, and you're doing optimal testing for that specific client and their audience. So you're going deeper into their audience, and you can start to get more specialized in things that you do on websites within that industry. And then, of course, you can bring your own best practices to the table. So if something starts to get boring, if you're worried about something being boring as a niche, then the solution for that is to go deeper. And the second piece of objection or feedback around niching was related to my experience with these types of clients. So maybe it's a particular industry, and whatever it is related to your niche, but your experience with these types of clients, that feedback was coming up, has been that they don't have enough money, or they're not as exciting, or they're not as easy to deal with. And then Mike, in his brilliance, started asking questions around actual numbers. So how many people have you experienced that are in this industry, or this psychographic type, or this demographic? Tell me more about real numbers, and then let's talk about it. And when we put real numbers on the table of the amount of people that we had interacted with in a specific niche, and our experience based on the particular numbers we were talking about, and we looked at it in total of the total population of that niche, it was not a fair sample size. It wouldn't be statistically significant in data gathering. And so his point to us was, I hear that feedback. Maybe you just don't like that, and you should search into a different niche. However, before you abandon this, which may be a real opportunity for you, don't look at the 20 people you've dealt with out of 20,000 of the entire population of that industry or that particular niche. Don't act like that's a valid sample. You have not sampled the population yet. It's not a good sample size. And so your data and feedback is not necessarily valid. What you need to do is gather a bigger sample, a real sample of like the 20,000 people in that industry or in that niche. And then you can make a decision that most of these companies are like this. But from his experience, 20% of, he uses that Pareto principle, 20% of the industry or niche that you're looking at is going to have enough money. They will act in certain ways that are better client experiences for you, the provider. And so if you haven't reached the particular 20% that does have the money to pay for your services or does have the right types of interactions with you, you probably just haven't reached them yet. So don't, even though we have years of experience with certain clients, that does not then tell us what they will end up looking like. So that was a huge challenge, a huge pause moment for all of us to say, oh gosh, we don't have a really great sample size of any of the people that we interact with for us to say, oh, things are this way in that industry, in that psychographic, in that demographic. So the challenge to you would be the same. If you feel like you can't niche because people don't have enough money, and that really was the biggest objection, people don't have enough money to pay for your services. If you're feeling that way, you might not really have a great sample size of the population that you're trying to interact with. So that was highly revealing. And then the third really big thing I feel like that was a takeaway was, if you're looking to scale into the millions, then what you need to do is take the revenue objective and divide that by 100, because there are some studies around having 100 good, great clients, and understanding what your revenue needs to be from those 100 people will help you understand what products and services, what pricing, what kind of packages you need to get to in order to scale that business into the millions. And one of the things that it helped me realize as well, you can do that in the six-figure businesses and say, okay, I need 100 people to pay me this each year. And And that can help you get to that 6-figure business as well. But the thing about it being 100 people is that you have to think about, how do I scale this? Because I personally could not handle 100 businesses coming to me right now to build their websites or anything else. So it was a real challenge to think through. There have to be systems and organization in place in order for you to serve 100 people well. And then how much money would you need to be getting from those 100 people in order to reach your revenue goal? Then you have to figure out, how could I deliver a service that's worth this much, or a package of services worth this much every year to get 100 people interested? The other thing that 100 number did for me was think through a pipeline. Because even if we have the systems, and we do have systems for a lot of our services now that we could scale. So if that's a capability now, then let's talk about the funnel. Like, how many people do we need to get into that funnel or interested in our product or service to turn into 100 conversions in a year? So that whole exercise of just thinking through that was significant for us to think about growth for the business. What would it take to get 100 yeses? And some of that goes back to KPIs, which we've talked about before. And we're going to get a list together of KPIs that might be working for you. But things that you need to be looking at regularly include leads and sources of leads, so that you can know which ones are working best, but also then conversion rate. So if you have a 60% conversion rate, obviously you need to reach a whole lot less people to get to 100 than you do if you have a 30% conversion rate. And then that can help you tell, well, this source only has a 30% conversion rate. This source has a 60% conversion rate. I'm going to put a lot more of my time and energy into that source because it takes a lot less effort to get to 100 clients with a 60% conversion rate. So that just takes us back to KPIs, or numbers that we should be looking at on a regular basis to see if we can get to these new ideas for growth and scalability. Do I have the systems in place to be able to scale my business? So can I get to 100 clients without just me working on all the things? That's a big question, number one. Number two, am I niched appropriately? And do I have any mindsets blocking me from getting to a niche? Like it's boring, or they don't have enough money. Limiting mindsets that are not actually based in reality. So we had some good challenges over that. And then the third piece is, okay, what do I need to do to then pull enough interest into the business so that we could get 100 yeses at this number to get to our revenue goal at the end of the day? So those were 3 really brilliant pieces that felt very actionable afterwards, that we can get to a plan to get to growth and to scalability. Those are not easy things to do, by the way. I'm not minimizing the effort it will take to become scalable or to get 100 yeses into your business. But it does give an action plan for where you should spend your time and effort if you're trying to scale a business, not just grow. And I do not want this business to depend on me. You probably don't either, because that can feel very confining. And in order to not do that, those are steps to scalability versus growth. So that felt like a brilliant use of our time last week to get those pieces of wisdom from Mike himself. And of course, it's all built on the Profit First framework so that you can build a profitable business, not just a growth business, because we don't want to grow this business and pay ourselves nothing. We want it to be profitable so that we can enjoy owning this business while working less. And that feels like the real goal with business. Serve more people, work less, do more life. And that's it for today's Profit First lesson, straight from a meeting with Mike. We went to the source himself to ask a few of our big business questions. And we came away with those huge nuggets of wisdom. So happy Profit First Allocation Day. And hopefully that information also helps you grow. And just like it's going to help us grow our businesses as well. See you next week.